Hey, good morning and welcome to the Coffee Break Podcast, where we discuss business ideas, practices, and strategies. I'm Chad Lingefelt with Loc-Doc Security, and today we are excited for another fun conversation. Today's guest is Chris Gilliland from William Douglas Property Management. He serves as the president there. Really fun guy to chat with, and we've got a lot of common interests that we have discovered over a few conversations. So we're going to be talking about a lot of that here in just a few moments.
We got so much to say. We got a podcast to make. We're sipping on lattes, and it's time for a coffee break. It's time for a coffee break. Oh, yeah.
All right, welcome back, folks. Thank you for being here today. Chris, thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule to be here.
Well, Chad, thank you for having me.
We're excited. I kind of a little background, I guess, for those that are watching and listening. Your company is a customer of ours. We've been doing work together for a while, but just a couple of weeks ago, I was having a conversation with a mutual connection, Bill Rochester, and he mentioned that you were doing some unique things, and we were chatting literally out in front of our front door here. And so I said, well, I just got a text from him the other day. Let me give him a call and kind of chat. And so we had a really good, I felt like a really good conversation on the phone, and really glad that we were able to kind of get our schedules aligned. So,
oh, most definitely.
So part of the Coffee Break Podcast, we have a recurring segment on here called Rapid Fire. We do 5 randomly selected rapid fire questions just to kind of get to know you better. So, you ready?
Yes.
All right. Number 1, what did you name your first car?
I can't. It was
What was it?
It was a 1960 MGA.
Okay.
And called it the White Ghost. That's right. We called it the White Ghost.
The White Ghost. Okay.
The White Ghost, because it's so small. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That seems like an easy question, but no, I'm sorry, I just couldn't. The White Ghost.
The White Ghost. All right. Number 2, what's something about you that people would be surprised to know?
I really enjoy kids, and
Okay.
my son. I mean, that's just, you would never look at me and that people. Of course, I really, my son and family and things like that. Most people around in the business environment just think I'm 100% business, but that's not the case. So.
Gotcha. So you enjoy family time?
Oh, most definitely. Most important thing. I mean, that's the most important thing in my life.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, number 3, what is your real favorite book? The book that you really enjoy the most, and then what is one that you pretend is your favorite to sound smart?
Gosh, I've got so many books. I have a number of books. Like I read 2 or 3 books a week with audio books and
Okay.
physical books, old-fashioned books. Helmet for My Pillow. That's just a great book. And with the old breed, I can't remember. Lecky wrote the Helmet for My Pillow. Those are probably my favorite. I really enjoy military history books.
Okay.
And the ones in Moby Dick. I guess that's the one if you want to sound smart. And it's interesting, but it's a hard read though. But there's a really Melville, Herman Melville. That was there's a lot in there.
Yeah.
That when I remember the first time I read that book, I didn't really grasp. As older I've gotten, I just read it several years ago, and it's just. But it's not one you sit around talking about quotes from Moby Dick. But yeah,
It's the one you tell people that this is my preferred read.
Yeah.
All right, number 3, or actually number 4. What if you were trying out for a singing reality show? What song would you sing?
Gosh, I would not try out for singing, but gosh, it would be the most simplest because I couldn't carry a tune in a bucket. So gosh, you know what I'd try. Moon River. I would try Moon River.
Moon River. I don't know that song.
Oh, it's a great. Sinatra sang it. Andy Williams. It's a great song. the old standards. Tony Bennett. I love that song. I wish I could sing it. I mean, it's just a great song.
All right, and then last question here. What food could you not live without?
Steak. I eat steak. I like steak.
What's your preferred?
New York strip.
A New York strip cooked how?
Medium.
Medium. There you go. What's your favorite side on that?
I'm getting away from sides, the carbs and stuff like that. So if I do have a side, it's broccoli or something that's, because I usually eat steak for dinner when I eat steak.
There you go.
So I'm trying to
steak and broccoli.
Yeah.
Got to eat that broccoli.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you participating. That was the 5 questions. Pretty easy.
Yeah. Yeah. Easy. Yeah.
It was easy for me.
Yeah.
All right, so let's kind of dive into it. So one of the interesting things when I was having this conversation with Bill, and he said, Chris does a radio show every week, and I said, what does he do a radio show about? And so tell us a little bit about that. How did that get started? What are you doing in radio form that's associated with your business?
Well, we do a weekly radio shows in 2 markets, Asheville and Charlotte. Obviously our biggest listener base is Charlotte, and we only deal with homeowner association related issues.
Okay.
Current events or current topics, a lot of the stuff that comes up every day in a homeowner association, and it's an educational type of show. And we have listener questions to submit them email, and those are very entertaining for some of the far out questions you get. And we answer 2 of those a show as well. And it's a 30-minute show.
So when you're talking about doing something like that, where does that idea come from? I mean, it's when we're sitting around talking about, hey, let's figure out a way we can communicate to our customer base. The first thing that popped into our head was not a radio show. So how did you arrive down that path? Because I think it's I would imagine there's not a lot of other HOA, COA property management companies that are out producing a radio show on a weekly basis. So how did you get to that point?
Well, we developed, of course, I knew Lanny Ford, who's the co-host with me, for years. He's from the same hometown, and he's fascinated by homeowner associations as well. But we came about as I'd written a book on homeowner associations and what a board needs to do with regard to homeowner associations, or serving on a board of homeowner association.
Okay.
And we said, that's a great. It was well received, and it turned out it was a great marketing tool, because boards, people, we give it to people on sales calls, and we send it to prospects. And it's a great tool for that, and so we've expanded on that. And being an expert is because if what's the old saying? You're an expert if you live more than 50 miles. Someone lives more than 50 miles away from you, or they're from New York. So,
yeah.
so if you're on the radio, if you're on TV, you're obviously an expert.
Sure.
But we found it as a great medium just to communicate. It's interesting the questions you get.
Yeah.
There's a lot of self-managed associations out there that don't really have a grasp of what's going on. Then the people that do live in some that are managed, some of the stuff that's going on. But it's really an educational thing and a marketing. It's a marketing tool, just like anything. Because we don't make any. I mean, I'm not paid. I'm not paid anything to do it. So.
Sure. Well, and that's understandable. But you're developing content that's relevant to your target market by creating educational information. So you said that you're answering questions. So it also is helping you understand what the real issues are that your customer base is dealing with.
Yeah, I tell you, Chad, that is a great point. That is things that come up, questions that come up. It's something it's like an everyday type of thing, or there's a very easy question. It's amazing things that are going on that I guess we're in the forest and can't see the trees on a lot of stuff. But it is a great tool for that as well. I mean, that's a great question.
Well, I think a lot of times in business, we all know what our customers' issues are, or we think that we know what our customers' issues are. you open up a format and say, hey, ask me questions, and those questions are going to be so different than what you assume or you expect. So that's a pretty solid way to do that. So you're doing that on a regular basis, a weekly basis, and you've been doing that for how long now?
We're going on a year and a half.
All right. So a year and a half worth of episodes that you've got out there. I'm sure you've learned a lot from that process. What's one of the things that you've taken away from this whole process that you say, you know what, this is something that I never would have known if I would not have jumped into this?
Well, I wouldn't have known the impact, how it comes across, because right after we started the show, it was very interesting. I did a sales call with one of my managers, and okay. I went along and she did the call, and one of the gentlemen was he says there was an HOA show on the radio. When I was going into the church today, I didn't catch it, or I listened to a little bit of it, and I'm going, that's me. Yeah, that's me you're listening to. That's me you're listening to. And I didn't realize, I was amazed that we'd only been doing, I want to say like a month or two, and it was that. Now he didn't put my name, but I guess what is the old saying? If they spell your name, as long as they spell your name right, it's good publicity. But that was an interesting. That made me. We need to keep doing this, because if it's got that type of reach, because what are the odds? I have 5 people. One of them was listening to the show. Now he didn't get my name, and he didn't get the program's name, but I thought that was very interesting. But
he caught some attention from it. So with that, and you kind of alluded to it, you've also written, I think, would you say 2 books now? Tell us a little bit about like kind of the direction and the reason for that.
Well, the first book, I'd always look for a book that you could hand to a board and say, here's what you can expect, here's what you need to do. Here's what you're responsible for. Here's how you select vendors. Here's what you need to look for in certain vendors. Like I've got a section on how to select a management company.
Okay.
I've always been amazed that the questions you get asked by prospects, they really, sometimes they don't realize what they're asking is not that relevant sometimes.
Yeah.
And they need to be asking this question, need to be asking that question. That book's called In the Arena. That was in 2017, and that's what got me moving, like the radio show and the other things we do, the material we put on our website. But that was the start of that, and that was well received, because a lot of boards would look at something and they get something that's there's no real book like that out there, or it's a very abstract type of, like things that aren't that actionable. Like in my second book, I just got out, and got it out in May, which I've had the thing done. It's just been the publishing was just a mess this time. You wouldn't believe how much goes into a cover, getting a cover straightened out. But anyway, that book is called The Hot Seat, and it's on running an HOA annual meeting.
Okay.
And it's for someone who knows a lot about it, or someone who's just a novice to it, and that's very specific.
Yeah.
But it's I've gotten very positive feedback from people that have read that. I've given copies of the book to, and they say, things in here I wish I'd have known doing annual meetings. I've been to hundreds of annual meetings. I've chaired hundreds of annual meetings.
Sure.
And trust me, they're not the ones where there's punching cookies. I mean, I go to annual meetings where a lot of contention and people are upset. So I put that into that book from how to make sure you're doing everything properly.
Yeah.
And there's no book on that. There's really no book on that. I mean, on Amazon, my book's on Amazon. Both books are on Amazon, but it's amazing the book I have seen on there that very touch on it just are not applicable to a homeowner association, because they're like corporate annual meetings, and they need someone doesn't like the landscaper. And there's a lot of you need to how you're going to deal with that. And you don't need to know you're going to have a proxy fight at GM or something. I mean, it's just, so that's and again, I've had a lot of positive feedback for it. And again, that goes back to the radio show, the expert type of thing, and type of marketing. I guess that's a marketing.
So I guess the takeaway from that is you were looking for these resources and they didn't exist. Mm-hmm. So you said, well, let's just make it. And apply it, and you've seen some good results from it. So with that, you also, and I just doing some research on you. We were talking about this a little bit earlier, but doing some research on you. your website, the William Douglas website, is just packed full of resources and information, and it's almost like you go to the website and that's what drives you in are the resources. It's not, hey, these are all the services that we offer. I mean, you have a place on there, these are the markets that we serve, but the big thing that you can go on and find very quickly are blogs, posts, PDF resource articles. I know there was one on there that was like tips on better public speaking, how to handle, if this is your first time. Those types of things that are real life applicable, tactical, practical application standpoints for the people that you're dealing with on a regular basis, or your customer base. So if I'm a customer and I'm looking, I'm on an HOA board and I start to search for HOA board resources, I'm going to naturally come to your website, even if I'm not a customer of yours. And I think that's one of the things that really stood out to me is you've got those resources, you've got your radio show, you've got your books, and then you also have over 100 videos on YouTube, just little snippets. I mean, they're just a couple of minute videos on this is what this means. This is all of these things that are real life questions that you're getting. You're answering those in video form. Why are you doing that? Like, what's the benefit to the organization that it's out there in public?
Well, a lot of that goes back to training for my managers. I'm big into training for managers. The other aspect of it, training for our clients, because if someone has a question about, I'm trying to think of those videos like irrigation. We just did a video on of irrigation. Those things come up, and you need to know the HOA slant on it.
Yeah.
Because you can go to irrigation, somebody that installs irrigation, and they're going to have, an article on how to install and everything. Well, our video says, here's what our boards have done. Like some boards, because of the expense of the water, they're putting in wells instead of hooking up to city municipal sources. Those are the type of things I relate back to. In our business, you can look at so many things and relate it back to, back to the HOA. So there's always a tie-in that's very specific for my industry.
Sure. Well, and I think what's interesting is, I think this conversation, if you're listening to it, you're watching it, it's like it can be very specific to HOA, but I think the intrigue to me as we were having these conversations is that you can take the HOA side of it out of it, the HOA perspective out of it, and just apply it to any business as a whole. So topics, problems, solutions that are relevant to my industry and my customer base, sharing those, basically creating a medium where people can come and get that information, whatever it is. Take the HOA part of it out. That's just the recipe that you're using, is being the administrator of practical information for your industry. Was that from a book that you read? Is that an idea, like just a random thing that came up in conversation?
It was a book. I was trying to recall that book earlier. It's just, there was a book I read years ago, and it says, if you don't distinguish yourself from your competitors, you're going to be a commodity.
Yeah.
Because if everything's the same, which if you go in and you're, in your industry, locks and cameras, you've got to distinguish yourself. And if you don't distinguish yourself, you're a commodity.
Yeah.
So then everybody defaults to price.
Sure.
So if you're not an expert, if you're not you're doing something that's lifts you above everybody else, you're just like everybody else, and people default to price then.
And with property management, you're selling a service. You're not necessarily selling a product, a widget, so to speak. So I would imagine, and you may know this a lot better than I do, so I just kind of pitched it out there, people aren't shopping for HOA management companies on a daily basis. It's not like something that they change up on a whim. There's I'm sure a lot of research and a lot of decisions that are pre-decisions that are being made to make that decision. And
that goes back to the website as well, is that when people do research, we want them to come to our site and think of us. We started this years ago in 2005, I believe, where we started a newsletter.
Okay.
And then we started from there, and it's evolved into all our marketing things. And basically it is information, because the more educated people are, they come to our website, it's a positive, and we're selling ourselves as experts, and we know what we're doing.
So I want us to kind of switch gears a little bit, because one of the interesting things that I think you cannot dismiss is, and I'm pulling this from you through conversation, that you're very process driven.
Yes.
One would not sit down and write a book about how to choose an HOA management company or how to run an annual meeting if one was not process driven.
Yeah.
it doesn't connect. So how much of the process and procedures has been a big part of the growth of your business?
Oh, it's that, and people are everything. Your processes. My background's first real job out of school was internal auditing. I was internal auditor for a Fortune 500 company, and then I was transferred to the industrial engineering special projects department. There, I wrote procedure manuals for 2 of the subsidiaries of the company.
Okay.
So time motions. I mean, it was very, very. My background, I graduated NC State with a business management degree, and it's kind of that type of process stuff is. I'd like to say I got a lot of education from it, but it helped. But it's a lot of that's on the job. But in understanding processes, internal auditing was really was important for that as well. Understanding a little piece of everything, and moving it and how it interacts. But the processes, I always look at you've either got process problems, you got employee problems, or you got customer problems.
Okay.
So when something comes up, is the employee the problem? Obviously, is he not well suited for the account? Is he not trained well enough? Then you can go up branch off of that as well. Does he need more training? Is he not well suited personality wise? Then let's go with that. Is we like on new hires now we do personality testing, intelligence testing, and things. We've done that for 5 or so years, 7, 8 years now, and those type of things that build off of that. And then the process problem is what are we doing? Is the account, and that can bleed over into is the account the wrong account for us too.
Sure.
And that goes back to how you grow a company. Someone asked me that the other day, and I said, you grow a company by acquisitions, or you grow it by organic growth, going out and get new business, or you manage the accounts you've got. You either keep them from leaving, or do them better to keep them from leaving, or you look at the ones that are not a good fit for your company, and you have an exit strategy for them.
Sure. And
that's all those processes, and you kind of, it's going in and looking at. Gosh, we could be here all day talking about that. But you go in, like we made an acquisition several years ago. We went in and looked at the manager base. There was a lack of certain basic skills that we demand. We did the personality testing on them. We did the intelligence testing on them, and we said some of these people aren't going to fit in. Most people do though.
Sure.
And then, fortunately, you say, well, these people need this type of training, like annual meeting training.
Yeah.
My company, my managers can run an annual meeting, which is not that common with my competitors. So, because many times you have contentious meetings where a manager needs to run the meeting because the board, for whatever reason,
just can't get along.
Well, sometimes it's not even that. It's that I've got boards that say something's happened. That it's best that they have a third party do the meeting or chair the meeting.
Sure.
And training and going in and training those managers and training those new employees on on what they should be doing and how to do it. And that can be as simple as how to answer the phone, how to return emails, see what they're currently doing, how they're responding to the clients, how the clients are responding to them. That same company I was talking about. When we were going through the process, and I was watching the manager sitting there, watching how they're dealing with somebody, some gentleman called in and was being very abusive on the telephone, using profanity towards my manager. Yeah. And I could hear the phone calls. I was monitoring. I had to hear the phones. And I said, put him on hold. I said, this phone call's over.
Yeah.
I said, we're not
dealing with that.
No, we're not. I mean, tell him he can send it U.S. mail. I mean, there's nothing I don't talk to you that way.
Yeah.
So the manager, and getting back to the manager, she didn't. We used to have to put up with that. Well, you don't. That's not part of our process. We treat people how we want to be treated. And they need to reciprocate. And I know that's a long response to your question there. So, but
no, I think you just dropped a lot of very valuable information. So just to kind of recap, you said that you've got people, you have processes, and you have customers, and you can really kind of point that back to anytime you have an issue in your company, it's going to be one of those three things. Yeah. If you and it takes all three of those things to have a functional organization. Mm-hmm. So. The process is a third of, in this formula, is a third of everything from a functional aspect. If you have the people and you have customers and you don't have good processes, it will stagnate and cause your company not to grow and maybe even go backwards.
Right.
So when you looked at it as a whole, starting out with these processes, where did because it can be an overwhelming task, right?
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely.
Where do you start?
Well, what I did, like when I came in, me and my business partner, we bought William Douglas, and I sat around. There's an old, trying to think of this, Thomas Fuller made the quote, goes in like a lion and leaves like a lamb.
Okay.
Well, you do the opposite when you do acquisitions. You go in like a lamb, and then you leave like a lion, because I don't know everything, but you want to find out what's going on. And I've been in acquisition. My first company was bought by another company, and I saw the mistakes those guys made.
Okay.
And you don't go in just with a machete; you go in with a scalpel. But anyway, like William Douglas, I sat down with their accounts payable. A lot of my accounting is a big part of my background. And I watched what the processes one of the accounts receivable clerks was doing, mm-hmm. accounts payable clerks was doing. She was accounts receivable, and she was doing manual deposit slips for checks that came in. So I asked her, I said, why are you doing manual? Because I always want to ask, because that's another problem people have when they go in. I'm going to tell you how to do it. There might be a real good reason why she's doing it. I have no idea, because I don't know everything. And, employees are very surprised when you say that to them, because I don't know everything, but I want to explain to me why you're doing it that way. And I said, because you're putting those checks into the computer, and the check numbers does not print out a deposit slip. And she goes, well, the printer back there, we print checks on. We have to use magnetic ink, and we print checks on that one. And I said, well, why don't I get you another printer with another Micker cartridge? And she goes, well, I guess you could do that.
I didn't know that was an option.
Yeah. And I said, well, I went and got an HP4 for $40, and because those things are workhorses, and I put a Micker cartridge in it, and she was doing deposit slips. And I know this sounds elementary, but it was like she was probably spending at least 4 to 5 hours a day doing deposit slips, handwriting deposit slips and putting them in. That cut that job in half.
Yeah.
So, and there's other things. Other things I looked at, I remember they handed me a list of accounts that had left, because in our industry, there's turn like in every industry, and I'm looking at the list, and it had a list of accounts, and they said, what's this list here? He said, well, if somebody calls in, they're looking for this account, and they've gone to another management company. So I said, so you give them this number? And he said, yeah. So I said, I got a question. Who are the managers on all these accounts? So I went down through the list, and I had one manager that was over half of those. So I don't need a Harvard MBA to. Yeah, I got a people problem. And then it was interesting on that same. I also used that same list. 12 months after those contracts started, I called those management companies and asked to speak to the manager.
Okay.
And I wanted to see if the account was still there. Over 80% of the accounts had fired us or left. I don't know how. Before I bought the company, I don't know what was going on. Sure. I don't know why they left, but over 80% of them had gone on to another management company in 12 months, which is is a problem in our industry, because you do have some turn, but that is those are processes you look at, and then you try to sit back and go, well, obviously you got a manager problem with that one, but you're looking at why is that account not a good fit for us? Why is that account turning? So like we pick up an account, I always want to find out, why did you fire your last management company? Then if you have any type of turn, any types of problems with when you're managing an account, what is going on? Is it a personality conflict, or is it a process conflict? Yeah. I've had boards that want to implement very complex processes before, and I can tell you right now, complex processes are prone to break down. So I want a process as simple as possible so that it does not break down.
So it sounds to me like what you're saying is that you've improved some of your interviewing and people selection processes for your organization, but you also are implementing some type of some almost interview tactics for your client base as well, understanding where they are, what their goals are, and why they are changing management companies, why they're changing their vendor at that point, because that's going to tell you a lot of kind of future decision making.
Oh, most definitely. And you were talking about the employee interviewing. We have an intelligence test.
Okay.
And I tell this to people, they don't believe it. I make sure I hire everybody smarter than me, because I don't want them to. I mean, I don't think some business owners think that's a good idea, but I want them to at least get more than I did on that test, because I took the test.
Gotcha.
So that's a big part. That's a big part of making sure you're getting the right people in place and that can be trained, and the process of finding out why someone's left another company or why, and because I want to know that, because sometimes do they have unreal expectations? In most cases, it's not that, but or what processes did they not that the prior company was not doing to your satisfaction?
Yep.
Those are the type of things that we want to find out, and that's just again, that's just, we consider that everyday business for us.
So processes and people, finding the right processes, implementing them, and obviously the right customers to work with. Your processes allowed you, once you had solid processes, proven processes in place, and obviously there are ones that you're going to be tweaking and improving all the time. But once you get that in place, then how do you already alluded to it, acquisition. How do you go, or how do you know when it's right to move in acquisition, and kind of are you specific, looking for specific markets? What is the reason for the acquisition?
Okay. Going back to that, what you said about employees, we do a lot of training. We have formalized training manuals. That's a big part of what we do. We have over 50 training manuals for new managers and how to train and accounting people as well. But that is a big part of the process, is so that when we do have a candidate come in, that they, a lot of companies, and this just isn't management companies, is that that somebody's leaving and they say, sit with that guy who's leaving there and for 2 weeks or whatever, and pick up his bad habits. So what we do is we
never heard that before.
Well, I mean, well, it's like if the barrel of the rotten's got rotten apples in it, you go to the tree, so you start from scratch, and we train from scratch. But going back to mergers and acquisitions, that's a big part, because we have to implement the training where we go, because we want those managers to, at least we're singing from the same hymn book. As what we look for, we started out, our first acquisition was a smaller one, and we started with organic growth, expanding into the Columbia market, then into the Myrtle Beach market, then into the Raleigh market. And we found that organic expansion is very expensive. If people think acquisition growth is expensive, they ought to try organic growth. It's just you don't have revenue coming in. It's tougher, and you have to do that in some markets. And we did it in those 3 markets, but we've made acquisitions in those markets after we got there.
Gotcha.
And we have a full-time person going around who's my acquisition guy.
Okay.
And he's working that. He's working at 24/7. I mean,
so you basically have moved into the process where acquisitions is as much of a business model as going after customers.
The organic, yes, because it's just the expense in our industry, and it may be different in other industries. Going in and buying someone, or just starting from scratch without a customer base, it's just you see what hinders us is the contracts. If we're going to build a gas station, all we got to do is have a great location. Yeah. With us, we're competing with people whose contract may not be up for a year or 2 years. So we have to make, it's just the cash flow, and then because banks and where we borrow money and things, they do not like they like cash flow. They like positive balance sheets.
So you mentioned that you had been on the end of being an employee that was part of an acquisition, and you kind of saw some of the struggle with that, or some of the things that weren't great. what are some of the lessons that you've learned? Maybe just a quick, if somebody's following this podcast and they go, hey, this is something that I'm thinking about doing, trying to get into these acquisitions. What's something that you would say, hey, this is one of many things that you might need to be aware of, but a tip that they should be mindful of when they get into that process?
Well, I'll tell you, first of all, there's a great book, Acquisitions. I cannot remember the title. The author is Hoffman.
Okay.
Is Hoffman, Norman Hoffman. And it's a great book for small companies that are looking to make acquisitions. And matter of fact, I've met the author. After I read the book, I sent him an email. I said, I've read over 24 books on acquisitions, and this is by far the best book I've ever read on the topic. And the what you look for and how to deal with it. A lot of stuff's in that book as well, but you do learn. The biggest thing I've learned from acquisition is do it as fast as you can. Go in, make your decisions, make your tough decisions as fast as you can. Not like a line, but you go in, you say we're going to go to our computer system, and that's not an option.
Yeah.
We're going to go into you're using a different software. You're going to start using our software.
Gotcha.
And you're going to we're going to do training. And every time you go somewhere, we say, we're real busy. And I said, well, I'm pretty busy too. So, we're all, if I got time to train and everybody in our company's got time to train, you've got time to train.
Making training a priority.
It is, if you look at anything that I look at is the people, you got to get quality people, but the training is paramount. And then you're still going to have stuff happen. But again, the training is key to it.
Yeah. I'm telling, my mind is going all over the place right now because you've brought a lot of information, a lot of wisdom to the table this morning that I think is very practical for any type of a business owner or a leader, somebody that's trying to start a business, trying to grow a business. These are all things that are very, very valuable. Process is huge. Finding the right people on your team, and then really at the same point, kind of creating a customer persona. Interviewing your customers or understanding the customer base that you're trying to work with, not trying to be, all things to all people.
One of my favorite sayings.
Yeah. It can really get you into a situation when you don't really understand your own identity, because then you don't know how to best serve your customer base. So I think it's very, very valuable. It's very insightful, and I appreciate. I've made some notes myself over here, so I can't wait to dive into this more and have further conversation with you about this, because this is the thing that helps businesses grow. Sharing these types of information, this insight, going, am I on the right track or am I way off track? And what you just said validates a lot of the conversations that we've been having around here, and a lot of conversations that we've had externally. So that's pretty exciting to be able to sit back and be able to hear that, and to have more conversation about it, and how we can make it even better, how we can always be in a state of improvement. So I really appreciate your time here today.
Hey, anytime, Chad. I enjoyed myself.
For those of you that are listening or watching for the first time, this is the Coffee Break Podcast, and it is something that we've been doing now for about, 9 months or so. We've got over 40 episodes online and available, with conversations very similar to this, things that we are just trying to learn from other companies that are doing it better than we are, learning from companies and trying to grow our organization and share that information at the same time. So again, thanks to Chris for joining us today and the great information that he shared. Next week, Matt, we've got some really amazing guests lined up over the next couple of weeks, and we're excited about it. So make sure you join us next Tuesday morning. We record this live every Tuesday, 9 a.m., and then it's available shortly thereafter on all the podcast platforms, iTunes, Spotify, Anchor, anywhere you can find podcasts, it's available. And, of course, you can get links to all that, Loc-Doc.net/podcast. Thank you very much for watching and listening today. We'll see you next time right here on the Coffee Break Podcast. To learn more about the topics discussed today and to connect with us online to hear all of the episodes available, visit Loc-Doc.net/podcast.
We got so much to say. We got a podcast to make. We're sipping on lattes, and it's time for a coffee break. It's time for a coffee break. Oh yeah.
The Coffee Break Podcast is brought to you by Loc-Doc Security. We'd love to connect with you online on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Just search LOCDOCINC.